Next, it's predicted Donald Trump is to name Marco Rubio as his Secretary of State. The word from insiders at Mar-a-Lago is that it's a done deal, awaiting public announcement this Tuesday. The appointment of South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem to serve as the next Homeland Security Secretary is another strong rumor. But for more on Rubio, who's set to become the face of America abroad, here's Eliza Herbert.
Immigration was at the heart of Trump's election campaign.
You see it, the criminal invasion, some horrible, deathly people.
And it is already shaping up to be at the heart of his next term in office. Stephen Miller, a loyal Trump ally, was the architect of the vast anti-immigration crackdown during the president-elect's first term. He will now be his new Deputy Chief of Staff, bringing with him a fixation on national identity.
The reality is that the foreign-born population into our country has quadrupled since 1970. That's a fact.
The burning issue of border control will be entrusted to immigration hardliner Tom Foreman, who will take the reins as Trump's, quote, border czar. The former police officer was also a key senior immigration advisor during Trump's first term. He will be tasked with carrying out Trump's promise of the largest deportation effort in the history of the United States.
Is there a way to carry out mass deportation without separating families?
Of course there is. Families can be deported together.
The new administration is also set to include staunch supporters of Israel, such as Elise Stefanik, Trump's pick for the new United Nations ambassador. She has previously criticised the organisation over what she sees as a lack of support for Israel's war in Gaza, and garnered international attention recently when she questioned university presidents over their handling of anti-Semitism during campus protests. According to the New York Times, the new Secretary of State is expected to be Florida Senator Marco Rubio. This is him last year when responding to whether he would call for a ceasefire in Gaza.
Are you filming it? So I want you guys to get this. I want them to destroy every element of Hamas they can get their hands on. These people are vicious animals who did horrifying crimes, and I hope you guys post that.
And the person expected to oversee national security policy is Michael Waltz, a Florida representative who has made a name for himself for his virulent criticism of China, a country often singled out by Donald Trump.
Let's get some further analysis of the possibility of Marco Rubio becoming the US Secretary of State. Our guest, Sean Foreman, political science professor at Barry University in Miami, Florida. Sean, thanks for joining us here in France 24. We appreciate your time. We just heard Marco Rubio there in a archive clip saying that he wants to see Hamas destroyed. So I can imagine Benjamin Netanyahu must be smiling at the prospect of working with Rubio.
Well, good evening. Thanks for having me on. Yes, I think the re-election of Donald Trump to a new term in the United States does have Benjamin Netanyahu very excited, and seeing who Donald Trump is naming as his picks for his national security team makes him even more excited. Marco Rubio is known to be a war hawk, and the quote you played there encapsulates that perfectly. That's not a misstatement. That's the way Marco Rubio has spoken for years, particularly being strong and aggressive in his support of Israel.
And in terms of the globality of the people named so far, really a tough line on immigration is to be expected, which of course was Trump's policy.
Yes, I think if we look at the U.S. election results, most people think that the economy and people's views of inflation and prices were really what drove the election. Many people also say that they were underwhelmed with Kamala Harris and Democrats' messaging. But I think running through all of that was the issue of immigration that has been a big topic of discussion in the United States for years as one of our fault lines. So no doubt about it, with a clear election for Donald Trump, that he will select people that go along with his talking points. Most of all, his policy advisor, Stephen Miller, is the person who came up with the mass deportation plan in the past. So putting him in that position is a signal this is going to happen. Marco Rubio from Miami is a Cuban American. He's a Latino, Spanish-speaking person. So Marco Rubio will be under a lot of pressure to slow down or to humanize this process. But it seems like, again, the Trump administration will have a hard line on immigration, will look to shut the southern border, and may even do mass deportations.
Indeed. I mean, the clip from Tom Homan in the report we've just played had him saying, yes, there's a way to stop families being split. That's deport the families all together. Are we likely to see, do you think, those images of families being split up, children being put into cages? Is this likely to happen again as it happened in the first Trump presidency?
I suppose it is, if that's the plan that they go forward with. Again, they're telling us what they say they're going to do. Now, when it comes actually time to try to round up tens of thousands of people, and how you store them, how you process them, how you send them back to their country of origin, all that's going to take time and money, and it's going to be very delicate. But I think we could see those images. Again, on the selection of Marco Rubio, it's interesting because Marco Rubio back in 2012 was one of the U.S. senators that was part of a bipartisan deal trying to come up with a framework to fix immigration, to legalize the people who were here undocumented, to allow them to stay and become legalized in 2012. That plan didn't pass. And in fact, our country has gone even more hardline to the point now where the plan is round up and deport people here without proper papers. So no matter how they do it, it's not going to look good on video.
Sean, how's it going to work between Marco Rubio and Donald Trump, if indeed that goes ahead? 2016, Rubio was, he said some very, how can I put it? I'll be diplomatic, unnice things about Donald Trump. And Donald Trump, he returned the compliment in many ways, in spadefuls, talking about little Marco and all that kind of stuff. They made friends or they made up, but is this basically the truth about this, is that their relationship looks to be as though it might be something that's quite volatile?
I think it is. Every relationship with Donald Trump is quite volatile. That's what we've learned. He likes you when he likes you, and when he doesn't, he will make it known. He will put it on social media. He will cancel you from his administration. He'll try to get you canceled in public. So, yes, I think Marco Rubio in 2016 was the first one to try to take on Trump directly with insults, but little Marco was put in his place and he was vanquished from the presidential election. And instead, he became a right-hand man, a lieutenant in the first Trump administration, and now he's going to have an even bigger role now. So I think as long as they're getting along and they're on the same page, everything's great. But that could change in a minute's notice, just like anybody with Donald Trump.
As you pointed out, Rubio is of Cuban heritage. It doesn't mean to say that if you are Cuban, your chances of getting to the United States have improved, does it?
No, in fact, they may not improve. For many years in the United States, we had a policy where if you came from Cuba, as long as you touched U.S. soil, you would get an asylum claim and you could stay. That was the so-called wet foot, dry foot policy. Didn't apply to people from other countries. When Barack Obama was president, he changed that so that you don't get automatic asylum coming from Cuba. And even though Marco Rubio is of Cuban heritage, he's favorable towards Cuban American people. He's not at all favorable towards the Cuban regime. And he will certainly have a hard line there and not make it easy for people to migrate from Cuba this way, because it's all part of trying to fix the system, regularize immigration, but also try to change the regime in Cuba. So I don't think we're going to see any softening on policy. In fact, we're going to see an even tougher stance from a Trump-Rubio administration.
That is something that, of course, Trump has promised when he was doing his, his acceptance speech. We can call it that. It wasn't yet at that point that he could be accepting it, but certainly looked like it was all beyond Kamala Harris. I think the first policy thing he mentioned was borders. Then it was immigration. That was the thing. And then it was economy. I mean, clearly, Rubio going around the world, representing the USA, the face of American diplomacy. Does he have the pedigree? Final question. Does he have the pedigree?
I believe he does. Real quick on the immigration, I'm in Miami, I'm in Florida, we know about the border states, but immigration became an issue in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Michigan. That's in the north. That's why Trump won. But I do think Marco Rubio has been a senator since 2010. He was a state representative before that. He's a student of foreign policy. He's been on the Senate Foreign Relations and Intelligence Committees. He's traveled the world. He knows Latin American politics as well as European. So I do believe he has the pedigree and the experience. He's not a token pick. as a Cuban American from Miami. This is a guy who has experience in the U.S. Senate for 14 years now, and he's ready to be U.S. Secretary of State. If selected, he'll be approved easily by the U.S. Senate, and he'll have that job.
Sean Foreman, political science professor at Barry University in Miami, Florida. Thank you very much for joining us and sharing your knowledge of Marco Rubio, the possible pick for Donald Trump to be his Secretary of State. We await, of course, the confirmation of that. But thank you to Sean Foreman for joining us. Pleasure to speak to you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Time for a very short break. After that, the news continues. Stay with us.